What's up? Welcome in. Hoge and Jahns with you in our crew neck sweatshirts today. Is that a new sweatshirt? That looks pretty good.
No, I've actually had it for a bit. I was cleaning out my closet and I found it. I forgot I had it. You like
It's a
it?
good look. The athletic
The,
crew neck. I got the
big athletic A
CHGO.
there.
Actually, I'm going Bulls today.
Is that a Bulls? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Is
our
that Benny?
CHGO Bulls crew. Well, I don't think I can legally say that. Maybe you can, but it is a
Lenny
bull.
the Bull.
It's Lenny the Bull. It's Lenny the Bull. Yeah. Whatever. It's a badass bull and a cool sweatshirt is what it is. Go to chgolocker.com to find it. Of course, you can get all our merch at obviousshirts.com as well. We have a guest today that's going to be rocking some Hoge Jahns merch, which is cool. Plenty of content to get to here quickly, but Jahns has a story up this morning on the Arlington Heights project with a bunch of info. So when I mentioned earlier in the week that we had a special guest, that's what this is all about. Some polling data that's come out from Harris Poll and a longtime Hoge Jahns listener that's behind it. And so he's going to jump on here and explain all of it. We'll warn you, like, it's kind of in the weeds with numbers and demographics and stuff. So I hope it's easy to follow along. I think we did our best to kind of explain it. But this is an episode you might want to check out the YouTube because we had a bunch of visuals and slides too on the YouTube edition of the show if you kind of want to follow along that way. But even if you're listening like you usually do in the car, I think it's still going to translate just fine. But this is going to be a fun episode as we get into all that. However, it's mock draft season. We're well into mock draft season, and Jahns was given the power for the Athletic to be Ryan Poles. It seems like a power, maybe the most power you've ever had at the Athletic. I don't know.
Yeah. It all started with me, everybody. It was a busy few days. I got to be honest. We did like a gauge of the trade market article a few days earlier. So consider that my market research if I'm the Bears. 5 of those teams that we talked to were the Houston Texans, Indianapolis Colts. We had the Las Vegas Raiders. We had the Falcons, who replaced the Titans from the first market gauge we did. And then we had the Carolina Panthers at 9. So in this range, we had all top 10 teams, because if I'm the Bears, I don't really want to trade back too far. Like, I'm going to trade back, but how much? So we were busy. I ended up finally going with the Colts offer. You want to hear it real quick?
I do.
All right.
Well, first of all, I want to hear, so how many offers did you get?
The longest conversation I had with anybody was with James Boyd. He's actually from Romeoville, by the way. He covers the Colts for us now. We talked the most out of everybody. There was a late offer from the Texans. They actually offered the 2, the 12, a 3rd rounder, but they wanted another late pick back, I think a 5th rounder. I eventually went with the Colts offer. Truth be told, actually, the Colts deal was kind of finalized before the Texans came in. So if you're wondering why I stuck with this, it's because of that. But I like the Colts offer. So I got their number 1 picks, number 4.
Well, we're real 36. Quick, though. This is very Jim Irsay-ish. I mean, so you pulled off a trade from somebody with Chicago ties.
Yes.
I mean, does James Boyd have a picture of him riding a bear somewhere?
That might be illegal now.
This is interesting.
Someone might want to look into that with Jim Irsay, like how he got on top of a bear at Lincoln Park Zoo. And I don't think that's safe, by the way.
I mean, as someone who grew up a few blocks away from the Lincoln Park Zoo and would frequently go over there, I don't remember having access to just jump on and ride a bear.
Yeah. My Jim Irsay story is when the Bears had their joint practices with the Colts that one year, and we're all standing out there in like this little area that we can't move on. And Irsay comes in a helicopter and immediately gets on like this fancy golf cart and comes zooming by. I'm thinking to myself, well, that's different. I don't see NFL owners do that quite often. Where I come from. Okay, that happened.
Have not seen George McCaskey arrive to Hallis Hall in a helicopter ever.
No, I have not. No, even with the private airport, not too far away. But anyway, I digress. So the offer I got was number 4, number 36. a 5th-round pick this year, which is Buffalo's old pick. And this was the key for me. The Colts' 1st-round pick next year.
Right.
Like, that's what was the difference for me in terms of, like, the Texans offer. You ask why, well, this is a multi-year thing, right, Adam Hoge? Like, I'm in the long game here.
Yep.
And I want to set myself up to take advantage of what could be a pretty good receivers class in 2024, led by a certain receiver of certain famous last name from Ohio State. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to play the long game here as Ryan Poles. So that was my deal with the Colts.
So you're already drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. next year.
Or at least trying to.
You should do that mock draft too while you're at it. I like it though. No, this makes sense. So when I did a mock last week, I did a similar trade with the Colts. You have the extra 5th-round pick in there. I had the 2nd-round pick and next year's 1st, which I think is more than reasonable. And I even mentioned in there, like, I think you probably can get more. So in your trade here, you end up getting the 5th-round pick as well.
2nd round, or the 2nd trade back now.
Yes. So you went back to 4, and now you're getting people can read it, but the Colts end up taking Bryce Young. The Texans take C.J. Stroud. The Cardinals take Will Anderson. So now you're at 4, and Jalen Carter still available.
Yeah, so this is the tough decision. This was tougher than trading out of 1, in my opinion. Do I trade? Do I basically pass on Warren Sapp? Like, that was the decision. Do I pass on Warren Sapp for more? The offer, like, what's the line from The Godfather? Make him an offer he can't refuse.
Yeah.
That was the Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am getting this trade proposal from the Falcons. I'm like, oh, they're coming up for a quarterback. Okay, let's do this. So the deal with the Falcons, who have the number 8 pick, I received number 8, number 45, which is in the 2nd round. And here was the difference maker for me. A 2024 2nd-round pick. So more draft capital for me to play the long game in 2024. Because, again, if I'm Ryan Poles, this is not all going to be fixed this year, everybody. I need to do this over a couple years, 2024 included. So that was the difference for me. Then came the surprising selection by Josh Kendall, the beat writer for The Athletic covering the Falcons. He took Jalen Carter. Was not expecting that. Obviously, the Falcons.
So he traded up for Jalen Carter.
Yes.
So he basically viewed this the opposite of you. He's like, Jalen Carter is worth these 2 2nd-round picks, 1 this year, 1 next year. And you're saying that in your mind, you're willing to pass on Jalen Carter to get a different high-quality 1st-rounder at number 8, plus 2 extra 2nd-round picks, 1 this year, 1 next year.
Yes. So my total draft capital, like that stung a bit. Like, if I'm Ryan Poles and that happens, like that stings. You need a 3 technique. But my total haul was the 8th pick, the 36th pick, the 45th pick, the Colts 5th rounder this year. So that's all this year's draft. And then next year, I get the Colts 1st rounder, the Falcons 2nd rounder. It's in 2024. Like, if I'm Ryan Poles, like, I'm doing flips at House Hall. Like, I'm dancing. Like, that is an amazing haul, at least in my opinion. Now, you missed on Jalen Carter, but I do think there's some pretty good 3 techniques to consider later in the draft, especially in the 2nd round. Kid from Pittsburgh, kid from USC, very capable players. But I took Peter Skronsky at 8. You could debate that. I do think there might be more merit in taking a defensive lineman, especially a defensive end at number 8. But I went with the best offensive tackle on a lot of people's boards and rankings, at least publicly from the analysts.
So I do like the haul you got here. I think that depending on what the Bears do in free agency, if they find that 3 technique in free agency,
another thing to consider, yeah.
Then I'm okay with the idea of having Skoronski and all those picks. That's great. However, where I'm at right now, I mentioned this on yesterday's CHGO show too. I have studied a lot of Jalen Carter, and I really do think he's really, really good. And not only just really, really good, a great fit for the Bears.
So
like specifically for this defense, when you hear the coach say, we need that position to make everything work, the engine that makes everything go. It's so when I look at, yes, big picture, the Hall plus Skoronski looks great. However, when you narrow it down to the trade you specifically made with the Falcons, the question is, would you rather have Skoronski and 2 second-round picks or Jalen Carter? It's tough because those second-round picks, you saw what Ryan Poles did with them last year, right? Like second-round picks are valuable. You saw what Pace did a couple years ago, getting Jalen Johnson and Cole Kmet with 2 second-round picks in the same draft. Those are multiple starters that you could potentially get. You could also draft, Anthony Miller too. Like, so it's not a guarantee. Adam Shaheen. Like, so it's not a guarantee. You got to get the picks right. I think Jalen Carter is such a for sure thing and a perfect fit for the Bears. That it's just me. I don't blame you for making the trade you did, but I wouldn't have done it. I would have just taken Carter there at 4.
Yeah,
after getting what you did. You got a first round pick next year already in the first trade. Great. I'm taking Carter. I think that's the best case scenario.
Yeah, that was the most difficult decision for me. But here's another scenario that I did when Kevin and I did our first mock draft earlier this, because mock drafts if you want, but teams do versions of mock drafts. They may not call it mock drafts, but they simulate drafts, as an exercise, and they start now. They really do. They start now. What I wanted to throw out there was the scenario: say the Bears just trade back to 4, right? Colts come up for that quarterback, and then you have the Texans there with DeMeco Ryans with a 6-year deal. He doesn't want to take a quarterback. He'd rather wait till next year. So he takes Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. Cardinals obviously have a defensive head coach now. They have their quarterback. So they take Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. So there's a scenario that I think a lot of Bears fans, readers have you that they're not considering is even if you trade down the 4, there's no guarantee that Jalen Carter or Will Anderson will be there. You're kind of banking on the Texans taking a quarterback or someone else trading up to get that quarterback. You need 2 quarterbacks to go in the top 3 in order to make that trade down to 4 to get Carter or Anderson. Like if that's your goal, you better hope someone takes another quarterback.
I think it's a point that
not many risk.
I think it's a point that not many are considering. I think you have to. Do I think right now the Texans will take a quarterback? Yes, I think they kind of have to. But don't forget, when you hire a new head coach, and DeMeco Ryans was really coveted. He's not going to be a one and done like the last 2 Texans coaches were. He's going to have the job security that if the Texans are bad again, then they could be in position to get Caleb Williams next year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a scenario you got to talk about. If you're the Texans, would you rather have Jalen Carter or Will Anderson and then be able to land Caleb Williams next year? Again, it's that long-term play. The same thing you're just talking about with adding these picks next year. This is 100% got to be part of the equation in Houston. Now, the difference is the GM's not new. Casario's been there now for a few years, and it hasn't really gone well. He's been through 3 head coaches already. So I don't know if he will still have that same support from ownership to be basically tanking for a 3rd straight year. But I think you got to at least consider it if you're the Texans.
Yeah.
So it is a little risky. It is a little risky to move back that far. That's where I'm almost so high on Jalen Carter that I'm like,
stay at 1?
Not stay at 1, but if you have assurances that at least that the Texans aren't trading up to 1 to get Carter, like if the Texans give you assurances that they're moving up to get a quarterback, I'm okay if all the Bears do is move back to 2 and then take Carter. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or at least in that worst case scenario, they're still guaranteed Anderson if the Texans do take Carter.
And look, if as good as Carter is, he could be the next Warren Sapp, Hall of Famer. You still don't trade up from 2 to 1 for a defensive tackle. I'm sorry.
Right. Like,
it's exactly. Quarterback or anything. Like, it's the most important position and the hardest to evaluate in all sports. That's what you take your home run swings on. Not defensive tackles, no matter how good they are. Like, that's just bad process if you do that.
Agreed.
right? Like when the Bears traded up from, what was it, 3-2? They weren't taking Solomon Thomas. No, you do that to take a quarterback that you want.
But now we're getting a little bit in the weeds, but I like it. Let's say you have multiple offers on the table from the Texans and Colts. Just the fact you have that offer from the Texans, using that logic that you just gave, you pretty much know they're drafting a quarterback then.
Yeah.
There's still risk, though. So now you take that information and go, okay, we know that the Texans still want a quarterback. Let's take the Colts offer to 4. The problem is, what if the Colts take the Texans quarterback? Now they might be willing to take Jalen Carter, because we don't know necessarily how they value the next 2 QBs compared to the one they wanted to go up for number 1 for. That's where it gets a little dicey. It's going to be fun. It's not going to be easy if you're Ryan Poles. But
it wasn't easy if you're Adam Jahns being Ryan Poles for a day or 2.
Did you sleep at all? Did you have to wake up at 4 a.m., not for the baby, but just because you were thinking about the draft board?
Yeah, I was so busy. The Texans offer came in so late. I'm like, oh, man, like, that sounds great, but this Colts deal just got announced. Like, I'm not going to be like, no, I didn't trade him. I didn't, like, turn in my trade card here or whatever. Like, you know.
Oh, so you had already announced the Colts trade.
Yeah, it was
sounds like you actually kind of effed up here a little bit.
Who, me?
Yeah, you should have held out a little bit longer.
Held out a little bit longer? Well, you know, that's where the baby comes in. I had life to get back to.
Come on. Yeah.
I'm pretending, not actually being Ryan Poles.
Right.
But it was a fun exercise.
Yeah.
What I would say is, like, my biggest takeaway is that a lot of teams are going to be calling Ryan Poles, or a lot of teams are going to be talking to him next week at the Combine.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that's where it's really going to start to heat up. So, and we're going to be there.
Are you ready to make a New Year's resolution that you can actually keep? Our friends at Manscaped have one for you: proper hygiene. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming and experts of men's hair care removal have you covered with your much-needed resolution of feeling your best. Join the 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use code ADAM23. That's ADAM23 for 20% off and free shipping. It's time to level up and fully align your hygiene routine with the most stylish and premium grooming products out there. I'm telling you, I love Manscaped, from their shirt to their boxers to the Platinum Package 4.0. The king of this package is the Lawnmower 4.0. It's a trimmer with a ceramic blade and has this technology that reduces cuts and nicks on your delicate parts. This trimmer is the perfect size. You can travel with it. Plus, it's waterproof. Do you need nose hair trimmers? They got that too with the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer. This Platinum Package also comes with shampoo and conditioner, 2-in-1, body wash, deodorant. It's the complete set that you need. Manscaped also throws in a shed travel bag and anti-chafing boxer briefs as free gifts. And I'm telling you, those boxer briefs are fantastic. So take advantage of Manscaped's best valued bundle and save 20% off and free shipping with code ADAM23 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code ADAM23. That's ADAM23. Time to save and shave with Manscaped.
Hey, if you're like me, you hate the hassle of trying to figure out what to wear. Who has time for that? I need clothes that are versatile, that I can wear on my shows, but also wear when I get home or out to dinner with my wife. And that's where Rhone comes in, because men's closets were due for a radical reinvention, and Rhone stepped up to the challenge. They have the Commuter Collection, which is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible set of products known to man. And here's why: because Rhone helps you get ready for any occasion with the Commuter Collection, offering the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, polos. You never have to worry about what to wear when you have the Rhone Commuter Collection. The comfortable 4-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way, from your commute to your work, or hey, even 18 holes of golf, which is coming up here, golf season in Chicago. It'll be here next week, basically, and then go away for another month, but then, come back all summer, and that'll be nice. It's time to feel confident without the hassle. With Rhone's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the products. It's that easy. I have a pair of pants from Rhone. I have a shirt that I love to wear. And it's true. I mean, if they're even slightly wrinkled, you just wear them for a little bit and the wrinkles are gone. The commuter collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to roan.com/Adam and use promo code Adam to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/Adam. Use code Adam. It's time to find your corner office comfort. Upgrade your closet with Roan and use Adam to save 20% off at roan.com/Adam. All right, well, that's fun talking about the draft. Make everyone check out the Athletics mock draft on theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns to kind of see how all that sorted out between picks 1 and 8, and then even beyond that, because you guys did the whole first round. And there's some interesting stuff that happened later as well, including the Packers getting a pretty good pass rusher.
Yeah, and the Packers moving a quarterback.
Ooh.
Check it out.
That's interesting. All right. We need to move on, though, to our next guest with the stadium talk. This stuff's really interesting. Also on theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns, if you want to read about it as well. But AJ Skiera from the Harris poll got a bunch of data, jumped on with us, explained it all. I think you guys are going to find this very, very interesting. Well, it is, we should dub this like interesting guest week, Johns, because we kind of dove in the weeds a little bit with Justin Fields training earlier in the week. Now we have some cool stuff on the possible Arlington Heights Stadium that could be built, probably will be built at some point. But exclusive to The Athletic this morning, as we record on Thursday, John, you have a story up on some polling with the Arlington Park Stadium project. I encourage everybody to read it as always, but a lot of this, I should really let you explain it, but a lot of this came from the Harris poll, which we bring in longtime Hoge Jahns guy. AJ Skiera is with us and works with the Harris poll, is behind some of this polling. And so I'll let you guys really take this away, but it's some fascinating stuff on the stadium.
Well, first, AJ, thank you for joining us. And I think I got to offer an apology here. I am the worst emailer, since the evolution of Slack and text messages and other ways to access people, emails. They can get lost. And so my apologies, because this is actually months in the making. A lot of correspondence back and forth. The Bears had quite a busy season. I decided to have another kid. Things happen. But I'm happy with what we were able to do over the past week. AJ, longtime Hoge Jahns listener, friend of the show now, provided us with some great data, some great polling on how Bears fans or Cook County residents in general view, the Arlington Park site and what the Bears want to do. So welcome, AJ.
Well, awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. Long time, first time. And so just jumping right into it, the Harris poll has been around about 60 years. This is our 60th anniversary, and it started primarily as a political polling operation. Lewis Harris, the founder, was JFK's pollster during the 1960 election. And then after that, he formed a company and moved into all sorts of different polling and market research, to where now we do primarily market research for companies, blue chip firms there. And my team, I call it like a sandbox. I get to poll on stuff that I find interesting and work with journalists, outlets, and newspapers to disseminate those findings. And so as a lifetime Bears fan, I had the idea to start polling on what fans and what Chicagoans think of the prospective move to Arlington Heights. I grew up just down Route 12 in Wakanda, and I, for one, was super stoked to hear about it, but I wanted to hear about how other Chicago area residents were feeling about it. So we launched our first round of polling in June of 22. So that's about 8 months ago. And we've been including these same questions every 3 months. So June, September, December. And we're going to be running these again, in addition to a few other ones early to mid-March. So we found some interesting things about what people think about the state of sports in the city, what they feel about possibly leaving Soldier Field behind for the Bears, and whether or not they want to help open up their own wallets to make that a reality or not?
And you mentioned politics. This is political. When
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot is outspoken as she is, J.B. Pritzker, the Illinois governor, has talked about the Bears' move to Arlington Heights, and obviously they have to get all the local politicians involved. So a little bit more background. So more than 1,000 Cook County residents, that's city and suburban, were polled for this. There's been a bunch of other polls that I've seen, but this is the largest, I would say, right, in terms of scope.
Yeah, and I was just reading this morning again, refreshing. I think the Sun-Times has run a poll recently on this, and I looked at, I think they did primarily just Chicago voters. So those only living within Chicago who either reported that they are registered to vote or will likely vote. I don't know much about their methodology, but this is more encompassing to be, at least based on what I've seen, City of Chicago and Cook County residents, but I can't speak to the other polls.
Yeah, because Arlington Heights isn't a neighborhood. That's that is a suburb. All right, let's go through this data. You provided us with some great charts. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see all these numbers. We'll do our best to talk through these numbers or articulate these numbers for those listening in their cars or the old-fashioned way through their phones and whatnot. So we wanted to begin with your first slide. I thought this question was, well, interesting. Well, the question is, how much do you agree or disagree with each of these following statements? And here are the two statements. Sports are an important part of Chicago's culture. And the other one, get this, everybody, Chicago would benefit from being the home city of 2 NFL teams. Take us through it.
Yeah, so basic agree, disagree question here. And 85% of all Cook County residents, so that's combining suburbs and city residents here, agree that sports are, in fact, an important part of the city's culture. Interestingly, that sort of confidence or agreement increases among suburban residents to 89%, and city Chicago residents clocking in only at 82%. So Chicagoans, of course, are a proud city, and I'd say even the broader region, Illinois, Northwest Indiana, maybe southern Wisconsin as well, are very proud of their teams, the Hawks, the Cubs, White Sox, Bulls, and so on. But most striking to me, and looking through all of the crosstabs, and I think you could probably devote 2 weeks of a news cycle on the Bears beat to this, that 1 in 2 of all Cook County residents think that the city would actually benefit from bringing in an additional NFL team. Now, obviously, we know what that would involve with the mechanics and the NFL having to approve that, but just the fact that area residents think that, oh, we're open to it, I think is pretty striking. I've been a loyal Bears fan, as I've mentioned, but I didn't think that many people would be open to that.
My first thought when I saw this, Bears fans are fed up with losing.
yeah, that me
absolutely.
too. I feel like if they're the Chiefs right now, that's a hard no. But I really do think that probably reflects some of the frustration. And I wonder, like, if you even did that poll pre-drafting of Justin Fields, if it would have been even higher. Yeah.
And interesting breakdowns, or I guess dynamics at play here across the issues that we pulled on are age breakdowns. I think we might have a slide on that. But so again, 85% of all Cook County residents think that Chicago or sports are an important part of the local culture. That increases to 92% for those age 55 and up. Clocks down to 84% of those age 35 to 54, and only 79% in the 18 to 34-year-old cohort, which is still a pretty large majority. But the fact that you have about 10 to 13% attrition as you get younger and younger makes, I guess, intuitive sense to me, where they haven't had that much to cheer for among their sports. Obviously, the Hawks had their great run in the 2010s, Cubs in 2016, Sox in 2005, but it's pretty barren compared to some of the other cities that are providing success no matter the sport, like LA in recent years, Boston, New York. They've all had more success regularly across these different sports than we have. And it is pretty middling, where you have the 35 to 54-year-old cohort clocking at the highest degree in terms of support for a second NFL team, but it's still pretty mixed, where 18 to 34-year-olds are 49% agree, and 55 and up are 47% agree. So I guess it is support for a potential second NFL team does stay pretty standard across the ages.
First, good on you for mentioning the 2005 White Sox, because Adam Hoge would have kicked you off this podcast almost immediately.
Yeah, I had to dig deep for it.
Yeah.
Because according to the ESPN, sometimes it didn't happen, right, Adam?
No, it never happened, and that's fine. I know it happened. I was there. That's all that matters.
Yeah, maybe it happened. I'm not sure these days, anyway. But again, like I think of if I could just relate it to myself and my son's watching the Bears, like. My oldest, who's 11, has like a Tom Brady shirt. My youngest, who's 5, wants a Justin Jefferson jersey because he's like every kid's favorite player, and he does the gritty around the house. He pretends to be him, like all that stuff. Like, but that's success. It's what they see on TV: the highlights, the wins, the celebrations. Now he could do the Cole Kmet like home run swing, the softball swing, whatever you want to call it. But the Bears stink. They have stunk, at least in their lives thus far. So even if I feel like if you did this data, if like you polled, like 9 to 12-year-olds, like their favorite teams would be like the Chiefs, the Patriots, all the teams with the fun players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean that's part of the reason why I'm excited that we started this sort of regular pulsing on just the local sports scene now at the start of the Kevin Warren administration, and projecting that years into the future to see how these trends shape up over time. Because it does seem to be a sort of a new energy around Hallis Hall, where you have Ryan Poles come in, Matt Eberflus, and now you have Kevin Warren, and they're more likely than not, seemingly to all outside observers, moving forward with the stadium development in Arlington Heights. And it just seems to be a sort of different energy or vibe around Hallis Hall. And you two know better than me, since you live this world every day and you're in it. But I guess a casual fan such as myself, or diehard, I should out myself as, it definitely seems to be much more excitement and energy about the team.
Just a quick question on the polling. I mean, do you know, just another theory popping in my head right now is that 18 to 34-year-old demographic, maybe younger residents that haven't necessarily lived here all that long? Is that possible too, where like they're not necessarily totally entrenched in the Chicago sports culture, whereas, a 55 plus has probably been here and has a little bit better understanding of what sports means to the city?
Yeah, that can certainly be a dynamic. We don't ask it directly, so I can't speak to it with certainty, but I'd say looking to that second level analysis, I think that's definitely something that could pop in.
AJ, another interesting point or part of this, I should say, is how your polling actually breaks down by race and ethnicity in terms of support, or in this case, like belief of the need for 2 NFL teams. Can you take us through that data as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, there's a lot of conjecture that can go into why this might be in terms of the differences underlying the levels of support amongst white Chicagoans, Black Chicagoans, Hispanic or Latino Chicagoans. And my hypothesis, again, just sort of as a lay observer, but also someone who's listened to a lot of commentary on this from other outlets, that it could be just the physical location of Soldier Field being relatively hard to get to for everybody, but being relatively closer to the south and west sides than Arlington Heights is, for example, could be the driver behind why different cohorts might think or might vary their levels of support for a second NFL team. So when you look at that question, Chicago would benefit from being the home of city of 2 NFL teams, agree or disagree. White Chicago area residents clock in at 39% agree. Black Chicago area residents clock in at 2/3 or 67% agree, and Hispanic or Latino Chicago area residents at 46% agree. And so not too sure what could be driving the differences among those levels of agreement, but if I had some working hypothesis that someone much more qualified than me could look into, I would venture to guess that it just could be the physical location of Arlington Heights versus Soldier Field. Yep. And if you do bring in a second NFL team, the understanding is that they would play at Soldier Field, as Mayor Lightfoot suggested.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this a little bit more with some other slides, but one of the first things that I thought of in terms of concerns when the Bears started moving forward aggressively with the Arlington Park site was like the commute for some of the fans, like the far south suburban fans or the southwest side fans or the fans. There's a lot of Indiana, like just across the border, Bears fans. That drive might be non-existent for them. They're going to be watching on TV. It's going to become like a road game for them. It's so far compared to Soldier Field. And I know Soldier Field's not easy to get to, but if you're coming from Indiana and you have to drive to Arlington Heights, I mean, might as well drive to Indianapolis for a game. Yes, it's a day. Mm-hmm. Well, that's why they have those hotels there, right? Too, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm coming from the northwest suburbs myself, so selfishly, I like the location of Arlington Heights. But in just looking up some historical context here, Michael McCaskey, I understand, briefly flirted with trying to move the team to Gary, Indiana, or at least he postured as much. And if the Bears moved to Gary, Indiana ever, I would never really consider making that trek. It's just, as you mentioned, a day. So I guess location and geography could really be a function of where a lot of folks come down on this.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. I just think like the point of where the stadium is just sort of shifts, because it also, don't forget, it opens the door to other people that maybe right now are like, nah, I live in Kenosha, but I'm a Bears fan, or I live in Fox Lake. I mean, Wakanda's out there, and but it's not too far from me here in Vernon Hills. So it's like it yes, it's going to make it worse for others, but it's also going to make it easier for others. And so I think it's just relative to where you live. I mean, right now it's not easy to get to Soldier Field for a lot of people. And quite frankly, if you live in the west suburbs or even like the southwest suburbs, with the traffic situation down near Soldier Field, if you can come up with a solution for that at the new stadium, it's not that hard to shoot up 294 and get to the Arlington Heights area without having to go in the city. So it's just all relative to where you actually live. And I'm not sure overall, when you put the entire equation together, that it's going to make that big of a difference.
And I think there's some data. Well, we could go to the next slide, Kent. I think there's some data that shows like home location is kind of a driving force behind some of the opinions here, is it not?
Yeah. I think if like general support for the move to Chicago, or to Arlington Heights, among Cook County suburban residents is 45%. So general across the board support is 37%. 45% is an increase among the average. And support among City of Chicago residents, I believe, is clocking at 29% only. So definitely it's a function of where you sit determines where you stand, or at least there's a trend among that.
I mean, it's very easy for someone to be like, it's not my problem. Like, I'm a Bears fan and I live in Naperville. I'm not gonna have to worry about this.
Well, isn't that life? That's how it's how people vote, really. Isn't that not the truth? All right, so let's look at the funding here, because this is probably everything right now, like how the Bears going to secure the funding. I know what they're saying. They want to do this all privately. We'll see if it's actually true, because they do have the rest of the land where they want, public help. So the next question here is, in your opinion, how should each of the following aspects of the Chicago Bears proposed Arlington Heights development be funded? Private or public? So take us through this, AJ.
Yeah, so we split the question into two here, where we're just asking about the stadium itself, and then we're talking about the surrounding mixed-use facilities that they've discussed needing some infrastructure support on sort of redeveloping the area. And so the options there were, how do you think the new Chicago Bears stadium should be funded? Options being only public funding, mostly public funding, mix of public and private funding equally, mostly private funding, only private funding, and not at all sure. And so it makes sense here that people don't want to pay. I read as well that we're still paying off the 2004 renovations for the Bears. I was a student at the University of Miami when the whole Marlins Park fiasco was unwinding, where the city took on $500 million they issued $500 million of loans, and the ultimate price tag is going to be north of $2 billion because they issued it under subprime market conditions. So it can really hamstring a region and engender a lot of resentment against whichever team that doesn't handle it very delicately. And so far, it seems that the Bears are aware of this. They're trying to get out ahead of it and say that they're going to only privately fund the stadium. But looking at the stadium equation itself, support for only or mostly public funding is only 8% total. So people around the area do not want to have the state pay for it in its entirety or in its majority. Slightly more are open to the idea of an equal mix of public and private funding at 15%. But then looking at those who think it should be privately funded, either wholly privately funded or mostly privately funded, is 6 and 10 of our respondents in the Chicago area, which makes sense to me. And then 17% are not at all sure. So those are undecideds. They could break one way or another. I believe the difference we had mentioned between suburban and city residents, suburbanites are, I think, closer to 2/3 believing that it should be fully privately funded, 67 to 68%. And city residents are not as, or they don't care as much to the degree of private funding. Seemingly, if they feel like they don't have to pay for it, but if it's the state of Illinois, then I guess everybody will be paying for it. And then the interesting thing, if I'm the Chicago Bears, is I'm paying attention to the support of funding for the mixed use facilities, because that's where you see a slight increase in consideration or agreement for public and private cooperation there, or slight increase on mostly public funding there. So it seems that residents are in general open to the idea of providing some support for that surrounding mixed use area.
Well, that's homes, restaurants, a Bears Fit gym. So Nick Moriano will be there for sure, right, Adam?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You have 2 hotels. Did I say restaurants? Like parks, green spaces, like different types of residentials, like from townhomes to condominium. I can't say it, condos. We'll just say that, condos. Like that's what they're looking at doing with that area. Like in that area where the actual racetrack is now, would become its own neighborhood, like a stadium district neighborhood, with the Bear Stadium just a walk away.
Which is why just quickly, which is why I think there's an expectation that some public funding is, relatively normal, quite frankly, for any type of development that would be that big, that, a city would provide, whether it's plumbing or, just some of the infrastructure needed for something that would be beneficial. And I think, at least on the surface, that's what the Bears are claiming. That's what they want. If it's more than that, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see. I'm just wondering, who the hell is voting only public funding? Is that just like the entire McCaskey family and all the offspring? Like, how did they get to 4%? And I'm just kidding, obviously, McCaskey's, but like, how did that even get to 4%?
It's a big family, Adam.
Yeah, I know.
There are, I guess, some folks who might really believe in the project in general. We included another question on whether or not people think that mega developments like this are a good thing for the surrounding area, and it's good for economic development purposes. And I think 82% of all of our respondents agreed with that, saying that a development such as the one that we're talking about is good for the surrounding area in general, attracting other residents and other businesses near it. Like you see what Lambeau has done with their district, and you can see a lot of revitalization around some stadiums that really get this right. So I think some people might see a benefit there, but as you mentioned, most people don't want to have to open up their purse books to help make this a reality. And in September, we had polled briefly on what people thought of Mayor Lightfoot's proposal to renovate Soldier Field to put a dome over it. People had middling support for that, I think, in the 30s, and they were very much against any public funding for that. Overwhelmingly, I think a majority not wanting to publicly fund any renovations to Soldier Field to try to keep the Bears there. But as I mentioned, for the mixed-use facilities, you still have 55% of suburban residents wanting it to be fully privately funded and 44% of city residents thinking the same. But support for an equal mix of public and private funding has increased to 24% of city residents and 20% of suburban residents there.
Like there's studies that will tell you that like these stadiums usually aren't worth it. Like there's long studies and a bunch of research that tells you it. But like the counter argument is, well, we can host a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. The Final Four is here for the first time ever. Like here's Bon Jovi. He's back and he's here in Arlington Heights. I don't know why I said Bon Jovi, but why not, right, Adam?
I hope they shoot higher than Bon Jovi. No offense.
Well, look, it's like what did Wrigley Field just announce? Like Guns N' Roses,
yeah, but
Bruce Springsteen,
Bruce again.
Like they've had an Elton John, I've seen Kenny Chesney a few times at Soldier Field, Rolling Stones at Soldier Field. You know what, Arlington Heights? Now you can have all of that in this beautiful indoor facility. We can have it year-round in the winter. We don't have to wait till the summer to be outdoor like at Wrigley, where we have Zach Brown Band playing a bit of everything. Like, now you can have it year-round up there. Like,
Yeah,
the studies don't match the vibe sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's the key, John, on that topic specifically, is that I would think that those acts would prefer to still be like the Rolling Stones, to me, are still going to want to go to Soldier Field in July. It just, to me, it opens up the door for winter events that they can't really host outside right now. But that's the one thing I think there is a catch. Like, you can't just assume all these places or all these extra events are going to prefer to go to Arlington Heights over the city in the, when Chicago is as beautiful as it is in the summer.
Yeah. My one thought on that is, like, the United Center, which has a lot of things in the winter, a lot of concerts.
Mm-hmm.
Saw Bob Seger there. Fantastic show. Full house. Like, they capitalize on being an indoor facility in the winter. Now this bigger, grander place, which is years away in the making in Arlington Heights, like, can now be it's like your rival for those shows now, right? Like, that's your competition with more seats. 22,000, 28,000 Soldier Field if you count the floor, right? Or at United Center if you count the floor. I mean, how many are you looking at this new place? 65,000? It's more tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely competition.
And it can be an anchor for the city to boost its own recruitment efforts, where it was not that long ago where Chicago was trying to jockey for the Olympics. And if you have an asset like this to anchor those types of bids to say, well, opening ceremonies, closing ceremonies could be right here, close-ish to the city, whereas it was otherwise going to be farmed out pretty far. At least our respondents agree that it can be an asset. But again, you can recognize something as a potential asset, but then also not want to have to pay for it. And the Bears might be in the same position where, how are they going to get $5 billion? I'm sure they're working on that every moment of every day right now.
AJ, let's focus on maybe total support right now. As you mentioned, it's gone up in June of 2022 from 34%. Well, it stayed relative to 34% in September. Then it went up to 37% in December. What do you think's going on? Why do you think it's going up? And do you expect it to go up in your next round of polling in March?
Yeah, for sure. So in June of 2022, so when we first ran this poll, we asked whether or not people support generally the Bears prospective move from Soldier Field to Arlington Heights. And within there, that answer is a gradient of strongly support, somewhat support, neutral, neither support nor oppose, and then somewhat opposed, strongly opposed. The net support was 34%. The net oppose was either 33 or 34%. And the net neither support nor oppose was also about a third, around 33%, 32%. So people were very much a mixed bag. You have some people who strongly are anti. About 1 in 5 still are against the move from Soldier Field. I call that crowd the Mark Carman crowd, to try to, if you think of a person who's a committed Chicago fan there. But then from June to December, you see general support inch up to 37%, which is very modest. We don't want to oversell that by any means. But what you see more strikingly is a decrease in the net neither support nor oppose folks. It had gone down from about a third of all of our respondents to now only a fourth at 25%. So it looks like the Bears are peeling away some of those folks that are a bit more ambivalent. They don't really care than the opposition crowd. So if there was a more organized campaign against the move that was also trying to take away some of those folks that don't care too strongly, it seems that is not happening right now. And perhaps something might come up where it changes the game here. But interesting dynamics here as well at play are the segment that we call aware or not aware. So when presented with these questions in the actual mechanics of taking our survey, they're given a little bit of description of what the current event is, and they are asked whether or not they had heard about it prior to taking the survey. So all of those people who had heard about it, about the Bears' plans or potential plans to move to Arlington Heights, that's the aware segment. And total support among the awares, I believe, are 46%. So So that's about 10% higher than just the general population who support the move. And that original segment started at 40% in June. So you're seeing that perhaps an increasing share of people are finding out more about the Bears' plans. And of those people who are aware or count themselves as aware of what's going on, an increasing share of them are coming out in support of the move. And that can be to any number of factors that we can't definitively prove. But again, if I'm Hallis Hall, I'm encouraged about the amount of disclosure that's happened so far. It seems that people are generally on board with that amount of disclosure. Perhaps as you start navigating into some more thorny topics like how much money they need the state to pony up, perhaps that will have a significant impact on whether or not people support the move in general. But again, highest cohorts of those in support are the aware crowd, the 55 and over crowd at 43%. So if you're 55 years old or older, you're also more so in support of the move. And then, of course, the suburban residents at 45% are most supportive of the move in our most recent round of polling. And as I had mentioned, we're going to be doing another round of polling on these topics and a few others in March.
I think it's worth pointing out, too, that September was kind of a key month because that's when the Bears held that town hall, and the actual plans and renderings of not the stadium, but the whole plans aspects. I would think that raised more awareness and maybe affected the number of people aware of the project between September and December, I would think, or at least between June and December. I don't know specifically when that September polling was done because that town hall happened like the first or second week of the month. But
yeah, there was overlap. We typically field mid-month. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think that, so maybe that's an indication to your point that, the Bears are seeing a little bit of an increase in support, and perhaps making more and more people aware of what they're doing is a good thing to gain more support.
And I don't want to oversell, right, how authoritative any polling is, but just the general act of polling gives you a lot of data points and a lot of points of information to base your decision making on or your analysis on. So we're conducting analysis, but it seems that there are a number of trends that are emerging as key insights from these 3 rounds of polling, and it'll be interesting to see, just as a lay observer and fan, how things shape up in the months to come.
If I'm the Bears, like, what are you concerned about? Do you have to talk to some of, like, your African American fans about, like, their concerns? Like, obviously, if you look at the data, they seem to be more concerned about this project than some white fans. Or, like, how do you separate, like, Cook County residents, like the suburban Cook County residents, from the city residents? Like, what, if you're the Bears, like, what concerns you maybe about this data, and what do you have to maybe, I don't think address is the right word, but like, how do you gain more favor because you're going full steam ahead with this move?
Yeah, I would probably categorize that in 3 major points. So you mentioned potential concerns among Black fans and possibly as well Hispanic fans with their lower levels of support for the move, and probably trying to dig into and investigate why that is. The Bears, I think, again, an outside observer, have done a moderately good job compared to the rest of the NFL with their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts as a franchise. I would definitely prioritize that throughout this process moving forward based on the data, as you mentioned, Adam, that we're seeing there. Secondly, I would keep an eye on how support for funding is shaping up. Again, voters have their own ideas and politicians have their own, but generally they might want to be accountable to public opinion or use public opinion as an argument for or against significant public support for the stadium. So I would just keep an eye on that. Again, if I'm Hallis Hall, waving my magic wand. And then lastly, if I'm Matt Eberflus, I'm printing out the data point that 1 in 2 Chicagoans are open to a second NFL team. And I put that on the locker room for the next season, because to me, that gets me riled up as a fan to think that we're not that loyal to the Bears despite their trouble on the field for the last 30 years. But to me, if I'm a player, if I'm the organization, that gets me riled up to really try to deliver on this sort of new chapter that they're opening with just the general direction of the franchise under Kevin Warren, but specifically with the process and building the stadium.
What can you tell us about the March polling? I know you got some fun questions that are going to be included here, and I'm looking forward to getting to that in late March as well.
Yeah. So since our last major round of polling, Kevin Warren has joined the organization as president, which I think could be a sort of a sea change inflection point in the direction of the franchise. More so, of course, than Matt and Ryan, the second Matt and Ryan coming on board last year, but it just seems to mark a market tonal shift for the Bears and what they're, or I guess the level of ambition that they're setting for the future. But because of that, I'd like to ask Chicagoans on whether or not they feel hopeful about the state of the franchise, about the future of the franchise, and perhaps asking them to compare it to a year or 5 years ago, how they felt or how they feel about the franchise now compared to a year or two ago. But also, with all of this talk about the first overall pick, I'd love to see how people feel, if they do feel strongly, of whether they should take the pick, try to go for Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, or trade back and try to accumulate more draft capital. So we might ask on what Chicagoans think that they should do with the pick, among a few other things. But again, would love to share the insights with you and your audiences.
I love it. I love it. That those polling results will be interesting. To say the least.
You might get a lot of different answers. You might some of your pollsters might get stuck on the phones for a while if you're asking fans what they want to do with the first overall pick. I'm not lying.
Sure. I know.
You know, multiple trades back. You know, you have to look at what the Colts want to do. Don't forget about the Panthers at 9.
It's going to turn into a podcast.
Yeah. I read a mock draft yesterday trading every first round pick. So going back to 2, then to 4, then to 9, then to like 18. And other not realistic news. Yeah.
We just did our first beat writer mock draft. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. And being Ryan Poles, he's going to be busy because everybody wanted the first pick. I don't know how much action there's really going to be, but all the beat writers who covered the Colts, the Texans, even like the Titans wanted the first pick. So put me in a very interesting spot.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot. It's probably going to be one of the most exciting periods, I think, of Ryan Poles' professional life. He'll look back on it years to come.
AJ, this stuff was great. Thank you so much for sharing it. I hope that our listeners and viewers got a lot out of it. Definitely some interesting data as this saga continues with the Bears now having closed on the property. And we'll see where the stadium goes from here. But keep us posted on all the polling and the data you get and how it changes. And we'll talk to you soon.
For sure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, AJ.
Well, definitely some interesting data to consider there. I look, there's a lot, to be honest, there's a lot to sort through there. I hope people just listening were able to follow it all. I would encourage you maybe to go back, if you're listening, just check out the YouTube today to actually see some of those slides that we were showing at the same point. It might help a little bit. Like any polling, Johns, I think it's good to get all the data, and then you got to decipher it and sort of narrow down what it means. I think to me, the big headline that's most important maybe is that it seems like support's growing. Like, to put it as simple as that, it seems like support's growing.
And I think that coincides with the release of more information,
yes,
as you pointed out. And sometimes it's just seeing the vision for what the Bears have for a place and telling yourself or thinking to yourself, you know what, that's pretty darn cool. I'd go there. Might be 7 or 8 years, but that'd be a pretty cool place to visit. More information, the better. Obviously, the Bears have some certain issues to sort out financially. They do have to gain more favor. There's the public funding part of this as well, but there seems to be momentum for this entire thing. Not like there's the public momentum, which we just discussed, and then there's the momentum at Hallishaw with Kevin Warren and finally securing or finalizing this deal and really going full steam ahead with this.
Look, there's always going to be opposition, right? Like, the Cubs had to get through all that with Wrigley Field just to renovate it. And it's like, why wouldn't you want to renovate it?
Yeah.
Residents around, oh yeah, you're going to block my view. Okay. Well, I sort of get that. You're going to put the big scoreboards up, but the Ricketts found their way around that by just buying all the properties.
Yeah.
But even to the standpoint of, I don't know how much you've been following what's going on in Evanston right now, but like, I'm going to be honest. Ryan Field at this point is like kind of an eyesore in the community. Wouldn't you want that place to be fixed up? And like, yet there's still a small percentage of people in Evanston that are like, no. Like they have no interest in them even being there. It's like you live in a community that has a Big Ten university. Like, what do you expect here?
Well, tell Pat Finley to relax.
But I guess my point is those are situations where the stadium already existed and they're getting at least some opposition. Here I get it. Like this is if you moved to Arlington Heights, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, like this wasn't on the table. Yes, Arlington Park was there, but it's a totally different animal than moving an NFL stadium into your backyard. So I get that there's going to be opposition, especially in that area. But I do think ultimately, if you follow some of the early data that's out just on Arlington Heights, which we didn't necessarily cover, but those residents, there seems to be more support than non-support. So I ultimately don't think it's going to be something I think they're going to be able to get through all that.
Yeah, you could see where you live matters in your opinion. And this is true for really anything, right? Like go back to Wrigley. Of course, if I live down the street, I don't want all this construction for multiple years. It's a pain in the butt. But for me, who doesn't live close to Wrigley Field, yeah, get to it. Hurry up. Yeah. Get to work. It's difference of like if you're inconvenienced, that's really it, right? If you're inconvenienced, then your opinion of things is going to be different. Like if you're coming from Lamont, have you? It's more of an inconvenience. Now going to Soldier Field isn't exactly easy, but Arlington Park would be a little bit further. Different blends of traffic and whatnot. So I think that's one of my biggest takeaways is how home location, like where you actually live, suburban Cook County residents compared to actual city of Chicago residents, like factored into the actual data that the Harris poll gathered.
Right. Yep. All right. Well, really good stuff. I hope people enjoyed it. We need to get out of here. I encourage everybody to check out Johns' story too. theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns is where you go to subscribe. That's also where you can find the mock draft. We discussed earlier the power that was given to Adam Johns to trade back. I
didn't go that trady.
Yeah,
I didn't go that trady backy.
As I was scrolling down though, I was like, damn, how far did he go? Oh yeah, he drafted the guy from his backyard. Of course he did. Park Ridge. Yeah, classic. So
right over here.
It's good stuff. Well, you can follow me too, allchgo.com, and I have a feeling that there's going to be some reaction to the stadium info, so you might want to check out CHGO as well. Mark Carman is going to love that he was named by the pollster. He has now owned a subsection of the community has been named after him. The stubborn people that just don't want to leave the city. I get it. All right. We're out of here. Follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Johns. When we talk to you next, we will be in Indianapolis at the NFL Combine, as we have been for many, many years. One of our favorite weeks of the year. We will be there with a setup on Radio Row with Kent and the whole crew. We got some special things planned for you. Of course, Tuesday will be when Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus speak to the media. So we're going to have plenty of reaction just on Tuesday's episode as those guys speak for the first time in over a month. And in Flus's case, I don't think he's talked since the season ended.
Nope.
So we'll see where they're at on everything. And that usually brings some news in some way, shape, or form as well at the Combine. So we'll be ready for all that. Looking forward to it. We'll talk to you then. And yeah, enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you on Tuesday.
See ya.